Welcome to the Supplement Engineer Podcast. My name is Robert Schnetsky. Today we are joined by the founder and CEO of Cortex Labs, Mr. Ryan Michael Ballo. How are you today, Ryan?
Everybody? I'm good, man. I slept really good last night. My girlfriend slept over, and so we went to bed maybe 11:30 or something, but we slept like straight through to like 9 a.m. So,
wow,
feeling good.
Do you have a typical sleep stack that you use every night to help you go to sleep, or are you just naturally a good sleeper?
I'm naturally a pretty good sleeper, but I wasn't always like that. I mean, I do a lot of work, I think, on my brain to get myself to the point where I could sleep well. But in the event that, I mean, these days with sleep stacks, it's like if I'm stressed, if there's something going on, if I've taken a nootropic stack that's like way too stimulant-like, and sometimes if you take modafinil as an example past 2-3 p.m., it could fuss with your sleep. And if that ever happens, then yeah, a gram of ashwagandha, a couple hundred milligrams L-theanine, and then that's it. Sometimes I'll just take ashwagandha before bed, sometimes during the day, and that effect like lasts throughout that time, and I just sleep so much more restoratively. So that's it. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Jarrow makes a product which I haven't – I mean, I could replicate it, but Jarrow makes probably the best sleep product on the planet. It's called I think it's just called Sleep Optimizer, Jarrow Sleep Optimizer. It's got like hops, lemon balm, melatonin, valerian root, a few other compounds – put together, like dosed, like perfectly. It's awesome.
Fantastic. I have not tried that one out. I've tried several other sleep formulas out, but I have yet to try that one out. So that I think I'm gonna look up at that one after we get off of this call.
Yeah, give it a shot. Give it a shot. But yeah, I mean, for most folks, a gram or 2 grams of ashwagandha is going to be pretty good. And if that isn't like quite good enough to like knock you out and put you in that restorative kind of sleep, then 200 to 500 milligrams of theanine should seal the deal.
Cool. Let's wind back to the beginning. We're already getting into the ingredient discussion. Let's rewind back and let's discuss how you got into the nootropic space, the supplement industry, and the founding of Cortex.
Okay, so it really starts from my time in the United States Army. I was a combat soldier. I was a 19 Delta for a pretty great battalion in Fort Hood, Texas, 1st Cavalry Division, and look, I went to Iraq. I did a year in Iraq, and some of it was cool and fun and adventurous, and other parts of it were what you would imagine that experience would be like. And so, I really never planned to be in the Army very long. I was just like, let me just see. It was kind of interesting to me early on. And then, 3.5 years into combat tour, I was like, all right, it's just not something I want to continue doing. So I decided to get out, and then, reintegrating back into civilian society was, a little weird. Like I had just come from being on top of a machine gun on a Humvee. I was a gunner for most of the time, and we would do dismounted patrols and some other stuff, but mostly that's just what I was good at. Like hitting IEDs and shooting at folks, and then back to America, right? So like the transition was just weird to me. There was, I like to consider myself to be largely under control of my brain. But I mean, it was like, I definitely had some anxiety that was like a little wacky when I came back, just like typical stuff you hear. Loud noises make me feel kind of strange. I guess like, I don't know, weird stuff like the worst case scenarios in certain situations, I would picture them. I'd be driving and 18-wheeler trucks would be next to me, and I would want to speed by them because I'm like, what if the guy goes to sleep and he shifts into my lane and right. It's my car. And so it was just a lot of weird stuff like that. There's some, just some stuff I really couldn't get out of my head. And so I actually didn't start with nootropics. I started meditating. I read about it, read how it could be helpful, kind of chill me out. And I did. I took 2 weeks for 40 minutes a night, and I meditated. And once I was able to actually get into that, state, like when you meditate, when everything kind of just calms down and you're chill. Some, I mean, without sounding like hyperbolic, some change happened. I felt positive and happy for the first time in a while. My reactions to stuff that would normally kind of stress me out was different. My stress response was different. I had a lot more control over my responses to things. I generally kind of just felt better. I felt like I could even breathe better, just that kind of stuff. And so that really got my attention. So the next logical question for me at that point about performance enhancement first was okay, are there herbs that will do this? And You know, and there kind of are like L-theanine, ashwagandha, rhodiola, adaptogens, things like this.
Right.
But then also it was like when I meditated and the ensuing effect that I got from that, my brain performance was better. You know, I thought a lot more clearly. Thoughts kind of came faster. I was a lot more creative. So I'm like, you know, can I find some herbal stuff that can help me kind of just stay chilled out and relax throughout the day? And then also, are there herbs? I really was only looking at herbs in the beginning that facilitate brain performance. So, yeah, look, I went and read a bunch of books about neuroscience. I stumbled upon like some old thread like on longevity.org, probably just like one of those older websites that talks about paracetam. And I ordered some. I forget where the hell I got it from. Maybe like Lift Mode or somewhere, just like one of these companies that's been around for a long time. And the first stack I took was a paracetam Alcar Alpha GPC stack. And like, I shit you not, dude, like a half hour after I took it, I started to feel the effects, and I'm sitting there like, is this real? Like, you know, I want to work. I want to get stuff done. I feel really good. My brain's working good. My sentences are coming out a lot easier. I started to notice like the verbal fluency thing for me was huge, because not that I've ever really had a huge problem with that, but I mean, like, it was just so much easier to formulate sentences. At that time, I mean, I had started a company. I was an entrepreneur, so I noticed my to-do list, like there was double the things done on my to-do list. On my done list, I was actually getting crap done. I wanted to sit down and work. And that was a big step up from like, I guess almost kind of like forcing myself to work prior to that. I was interested in being an entrepreneur. I was motivated to do it all, but like there was this extra echelon of motivation and drive to do it all that I was obviously missing, that nootropics kind of gave me. So from there, it was like, all right, what else is out there? Yeah. Over the next like 5 years from that point, it was just experimentation. All the racetams, new pep, choline sources, some research chemicals. Modafinil was around back then, a lot harder to get. And so I basically just started experimenting. And I took this giant book, which I still have, and just wrote everything down. You know, here was my dose on paracetam. Here was my dose on Alcar. Here's how it made me feel. Here's when I took it. Here's when I took it in proximity to food. And I just started compiling a list of all the compounds that I took and all those fine details, which I think matter. And I didn't realize how much they were applicable to other people until I started the company, started consulting folks, and I'm like, dude, all this information, which is so detailed, no one's taken the time to do this.
Right.
And that later on ended up being, you know, why at least the consulting part of the company is super successful. So, company before this I was running was a technology repair company. We fixed iPad screens for schools and companies. And but you know, I was taking a stack at the time, which ended up being the Cortex stack. That was uridine, CDP choline, artichoke extract, a little bit of Bacopa monnieri. And that stack to me, like when I couldn't get my hands on modafinil or didn't want to take stimulant racetams, that stack was like the best natural stack that I ever formulated. And so I took it for like, I was taking it for like a long time, almost a year. And I was just like taking it, running my business, 17-hour work days, a lot of sales calls, a lot of dealing with customers, a lot of admin crap, just like stuff I never would have had the energy to do had I not been taking like a good stack. And so, yeah, I mean, this must have been somewhere around 5 or 6 years in. I was just like, got the bug to create a stack. I'm like, I mean, this is it. I just like, you know, when you come across something that you're passionate about and you know it can work from a business perspective, but you really like it, you know, to me it was just like, okay, this is the move. I'm gonna formulate this stack. I'm going to test it on a bunch of people. I'm going to get it manufactured, and we're going to start this company. And so I took about 6 months to test it with about 50 people, Army folks, other folks that I knew, business folks that I knew, other entrepreneurs that I knew. And I just asked them a battery of questions throughout the time that they were sampling it. How did it affect you? When did you take it? In proximity to what food? How long did it last? What were the effects for you? Did you have more verbal fluency? Were you more productive? Did you have a mood benefit? And you know, it was somewhere around 78, 79% of people that I gave it to loved it in every way. The other percentage were like, okay, you know, it's pretty okay. And then the other percentage, nobody responded to it at all, which was a small percentage. So it's like with those numbers, I was like, this is definitely something I want to bring to market. Worked with a couple product manufacturers to try to get the right price, the right quantity down, the labeling, all that kind of crap. And then, February 2016, so basically exactly 3 years ago, the first batch was finished. I had already built probably like 600 or 700 subscribers on YouTube because I was like, dude, I got to start early. I got to market. I got to get a reservoir of what I know out there. I have all this information. That's easily how we're going to build the content base. And then February 2016 launched the product, started selling it. We got orders like right away the first day. I mean, of course, the company was still in its kind of infancy, but it was enough to reinvest back into more product, buy more product, get it back out there, continue growing the channel, started the podcast, grew the blog more. Now here we are, 3 years later, there's 13 or so thousand subscribers on the YouTube channel, several dozens of thousands of downloads on the podcast a month, consulting calls basically all day, helping a lot of folks, and kind of just being engaged in the nootropics community at scale. And that's where we are today.
Fantastic. Well, there's a lot to dig in there. First of all, thank you for your service in the Army.
Man.
That's incredible.
My pleasure, man. It was something I used to watch like Black Hawk Down before I got in. I was like, this is what I want to do. And then, it turned out to be, not the greatest thing in the world, but my pleasure, man. It was my choice and I did it and it was cool.
Were you a big supplement user prior to founding Cortex Labs or even just experimenting with your nootropics after your military service?
No, not really. I mean, I never was into supplements. I think I had the idea that everybody else has, which is like they don't work or, you're not going to get a significant effect from them or something like that. I was just kind of skeptical like other folks. Didn't see the need for them, So no, I mean, I don't know. I might have took some vitamin C when I was sick. That's it. The extent of it, dude.
What were some of the challenges in getting the company off the ground?
Well, really, I mean, I took no money from investors. So the biggest challenge, honestly, was saving enough money, doing enough revenue from the initial batch of products to reinvest back in product. We're talking about several thousand dollars, sometimes 10 to 20K. And that's like in my infancy. I did take right around $11,000 from my previous company and just invested it right into the first batch of product and then getting the website set up and all that kind of stuff. But the most challenging thing was that it's like I realized in order to re-up in 6 months or 7 or however long it's going to take me to deplete these 1,000 bottles that was like the first batch, I have to – dude, I have no time. My work is totally cut out for me. I have to do 2 videos a day. I got to start a podcast and start cranking podcasts out to market everywhere I can. I got to be in Reddit. I got to be on Longevity. I got to be everywhere. So the biggest challenge was not running out of cash.
How did you mentally, because you're jumping between multiple different processes and your brain basically has to be on fire all day long in order to manage all these different tasks and stay motivated while you're doing this. How did you dial in on that exact mixture that you really liked that became the first Cortex stack?
Well, I mean, look, I sourced in 100 or so ingredients, a bunch of different racetams. I mean, crazy stuff that people don't even talk about, like a Chorus calamus. Its other name is Sweet Flag. It's like a verbal fluency herbal compound. And I just started putting stuff together. And the way that even if the way that I felt wasn't great, like some stacks maybe totally feel like shit. I'd be like lethargic and feel weird. Later on, learning I was overtaxing the cholinergic system or the dopaminergic system, but yeah, I mean it was just about experimenting until I found stuff that worked well for me. Somebody tipped me off to uridine. I forget who. I'm sure it was on the web. Somebody was talking about uridine as like this miracle compound. I sourced it in the first time I took it with CDP choline. Low dose CDP choline was like 50 or 75 milligrams. The uridine dose is at 200. And like that alone, dude, the first time I took that, 20 minutes later, I was just like, oh man, like this something's going on here, with uridine and then this uridine CDP choline combo. So then the next step for me about figuring out like how to amplify it, and this was really before I decided I was going to make it a pre-made stack, was like, all right, well, how do we amplify it? Because I had notated that I could amplify Nupep by taking theacrine. I had notated that I could calm down some of the stimulation from racetams by bringing in like things like rhodiola. So I knew that there was ways to modify the effect duration window or the pronouncedness of the effect on these compounds. So I brought in a bunch of different compounds. You know, we tried a lot. We tried Alcar. We tried basically everything else in the book with it and got good results to an extent, but nothing was quite like low-dose artichoke extract.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought artichoke extract, and this is right around the time when Siltep was like super popular and had just come out, and they kind of like blew up, and everybody was taking it. It was like this crazy pre-made stack, and they were talking about how you know, it does all this great stuff to the brain. So I was like, you know, let me give this artichoke extract stuff a try. I brought in artichoke extract and forskolin in an attempt to mimic the PDE4 inhibition that right. The Siltep guys were talking about as like this big mechanism that is super nootropic. Like, I actually did get that stack to work for me, but just like not in the doses that they suggested. I just had to find my own dose. Mm-hmm. But then, you know, then I was like, oh, artichoke extract, you know, that's very popular right now. People like that. Is there a way that I can fit that in? And will it work? So I started at like 300 or 400, totally didn't work. Started at, you know, dropped it down like 250, didn't work. It messed the stack up. Once I got to 100, it worked. And to me, the onset was just a little bit more stimulant-like when I took the artichoke extract versus just the uridine and the CDP choline. The Bacopa was really just about good measure synergizing with the action of uridine and CDP choline, which is basically dendritic growth. Which is something that Bacopa does over time. You just got to take it for a while. So that was it. Solidified the stack and was like totally into it. Kicked my ass every day. Like I cycled to an extent, but mostly I was taking it every day. And nothing prior to that had lasted that long without losing its effects. So that's when I was like, okay, this is it. I mean, we got to put. I have to put. It'd be irresponsible if I did not put this stack out.
One thing I've noticed is that there is no caffeine in your formula, but yet a lot of the mass market nootropics that you see in the pre-made blends have caffeine in it. What was the reasoning behind not including caffeine in?
Well, I mean, you know, caffeine does synergize well with uridine through their work on adenosine receptors. Mm-hmm. So they actually amplify one another. That's why we have on the back of the bottle now like stacks with caffeine, stacks with B vitamins. But, I mean, honestly, it's because I knew I would get critics for that. Like, we wanted to create a stack that was as stimulant-like, but way cleaner and lasted a lot longer without caffeine. Mm-hmm. You know, I wanted to just come into the area. I knew I was going to get some shit because the doses are low. But folks are looking at, you know, like studies they read with some 7-year-old dude that has Alzheimer's, and that's where they're suggesting 500 milligrams. So I knew I was going to get some crap for that. You know, and I was, you know, perfectly okay with that. But yeah, I mean that is, you know, that's what was your question? I forget what your question was.
It was the choice to not include caffeine.
Oh yeah, caffeine.
In a
yeah. I just didn't want all that extra slack for that. I knew people would be like, oh, well, it works because it has caffeine in it. You know what I mean? I wanted no question in people's mind that this was a good stack. Zero question. It was like once I found that the combination worked incredibly, I was sold on it. Like, I just like, dude, I know folks are going to love this. And the folks that don't respond to it, not everyone responds to everything. There's people that take 200 milligrams of modafinil, nothing. So I was perfectly okay with that. So that's the whole deal. And even moving forward, we have generations, you know, generation 2 coming up. I don't think that's going to have caffeine in it because I just don't want folks to be like, well, that's the thing carrying the stack.
Right, and I think caffeine is basically in everything we consume these days. I mean, it's even in peanut butter and protein powders now, as to where, you know, you could easily add a cup of coffee to anything or get, you know, one of those caffeine-infused BCAA supplements or have an energy drink with it or whatever. Caffeine's cheap.
Yeah.
So sure. I would save the budget for more useful ingredients. Not more useful ingredients, but there's a better way to spend the dollars instead of putting caffeine in.
Man. Totally. There's so many other compounds that are more nootropic. Like, I mean, if you want a stimulant, you can put theacrine in there, right. Alcar, other stimulating compounds. It's like, you know, save the money for other effective nootropics that actually work and people notice.
Agreed. I'm glad you touched on the fact that people were giving you flack initially for not partial dosing or underdosing, but using a little bit below what is shown in the clinical studies. And I don't think people understand the fact that very often these studies are done with single ingredients, so you probably will need a bigger dose of that ingredient. But when you're combining, you know, a cholinergic compound with an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor, it's going to make sense that you can get by with a lower dose.
Yep.
And that's where I wonder, what have you ever experimented with doing maximum dosages on both ends of the spectrum, and does that amplify the effects, or does it lead to overstimulation, you find?
You mean like taking high-dose Huperzine A with high-dose alpha-GPC?
Yeah, for an example like that.
100%, 100%. And your first assertion is right. You have to take way lower of each of those compounds, and you'll still get a great effect. Yeah, I attack dose basically everything in the beginning. That's attack dosing. And all I ever found with it, well, I mean, so if I was severely depleted, like I didn't sleep really well and something else was going on, I was tired, stressed out, yeah, I could tolerate 1,500 milligrams of aniracetam or even 2 grams or something. But if all else was good, it basically gave me side effects. The common cholinergic system overload side effects, lethargy, tiredness, like a weird feeling in your eyes. I even had like blurry vision a couple times because I just went way high on the cholinergics. You have like choline, you know, some sort of choline activity in your retina, and that's probably why that was happening. So yeah, I mean, yeah, lots of side effects. As far as combining Huperzine A and alpha-GPC, well, first of all, I took Huperzine A in just about 1,200 micrograms. Yeah, and
Whoa.
so that, yeah, dude. I mean, that the highest you should go is like 400 micrograms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, it was a dumb move. I didn't quite, this was so early on, I did not understand the mechanisms quite yet. I was like, let me see. You know, I really had a lot of work to do or something. I was like, let's just crank this up. Worst mistake ever. Like within, I mean, almost immediately, I was super nauseous. Then I went and threw up. I'm like, was it this asparagus? Because I just ate some asparagus and I threw it up. I'm like, is this what's going on? I didn't want to believe it was the Huperzine A that I took. And then finally I had to admit it to myself because, like, dude, first of all, my processing speed was super. Like my logical thinking capacity was incredible, but I was super nauseous. I couldn't move. Like, you know, my muscles felt really weird. I had to lay down. I laid down for like 7 or 8 hours. Did not move the whole time. Felt like complete crap. Like I was gonna die or something. And then tried to go to sleep. And then I like was in this weird state where I was sleeping, but my brain was logically processing information, and I was conscious of it, which is unheard of. Like, it's almost like lucid dreaming, but like way more intense and way more of a conscious awareness of what's going on. I was in there processing things. I actually remember being like, dude, I feel totally crappy right now, but I was like running through math problems and things going on in my life, and I was like figuring stuff out.
Yeah.
But yeah, terrible experience. I would never suggest that to anyone, and that was my experience with that. I have dosed alpha-GPC in 200 or so milligrams with 200 micrograms of Huperzine A. Not quite the same response, but definitely lethargy. Like, no point in taking that stack. I just felt crappy. There was no performance benefits that were, you know, that were stronger than the overarching crappiness that I felt from dosing that stuff together in 2 high doses.
Yeah. One thing I noticed is, continuing with the train of thought with Huperzine, is that a lot of pre-workouts these days put in, you know, either 500 milligrams or a gram of choline bitartrate, and then like a huge 200 or 300 microgram dose of Huperzine A, and then they're billing these things as something to be used every single day.
Right.
And I don't think a lot of these formulators have any idea that Huperzine is not something you want to be taking every single day.
No way, man. You know, that's as far as I can tell, that's the fastest way to eventually end up shutting off regular acetylcholine production. It's just like SSRIs. I mean, they are. Huperzine A to acetylcholine is like, you know, SSRIs are to serotonin. You know, you're preventing the recycling process, which eventually depletes the neurotransmitters and probably fusses with the receptor. So that's one thing. But I don't think those guys have any clue into the neurology. Like, they're just kind of just like, all right, well, you know, here is some stuff that works. We know that when people take it, it's good. They care probably strictly just about continuity of sales. And if they care about that, then they're going to want to have people taking this, you know, the stuff every day. And so that's their take on it. I guess they're afraid that they'll do less business. But like, what I figured out to the contrary is, like, we tell people with the Cortex stack, don't take it every day. Take it for 4 days on, 3 days off. Other compounds, don't take them every day. 4 days on, 3 days off. Do that for a month, cycle off for 2 weeks. And so that hasn't hurt our sales at all. If anything, it makes folks realize that we're more honest and people like us more, and then they want to buy more stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so.
Do you find that there are any nootropics that you can take every day? Because I know Bacopa, which is in the Cortex stack, but there's some good long-term data on that showing continual daily usage leads to the dendritic growth and memory improvements. Any other ones that you're okay with every day?
Yeah, absolutely. Alcar, very low dose yohimbine. I mean, yohimbine's a little sketchy. If you have high blood pressure, it might not be a great idea, but an otherwise healthy person can take 2 to 3 milligrams of yohimbine every day and be fine. I think a low dose of tyrosine every day should be fine for most folks, so long as it's not making you feel anxious. Same thing with phenylalanine. I think alpha-lipoic acid, which is, you know, hard to say about it if it's an actual nootropic, it's kind of on that borderline, but massive antioxidant activity in the brain, crosses the blood-brain barrier. That in low doses can be taken every day. That's really about it, man. I mean, you see people that take hardcore compounds and they're taking them every day for 8 years and they seem to be okay. It's just not something I would suggest. Modafinil, for example, like you got the Bulletproof guy talked about taking it for 8 years straight or something.
Right.
But then there's also so many other folks that have taken modafinil for 2 months straight and then they stopped and then they had the worst depression of their lives for a week until their brain could get back to normal, or they weren't motivated to do anything for a month or something. So it's like, if you want that, then fine, take whatever you're going to take every day. But if you want to, if you want to avoid receptor downregulation, tolerance, side effects, homeostatic mechanisms that take place in the brain that make you either respond not to the nootropic as good as you did or in an adverse way in the future, then take them every day.
Yeah, there was about a year ago, the first time I stumbled upon that Huperzine issue was that, this must have been about a year ago, I was rotating through 4 or 5 different nootropic stacks of just, with being, a consultant, companies will send me stuff to try, and I was figuring, all right, I'm doing due diligence, I'm kind of cycling between all these, but then I started noticing that the pre-workout I was taking during the day had a little bit of Huperzine in it, and the nootropics that I was using also had Huperzine in it, and then I stopped taking it for a couple of days, and I just felt like I was in this constant fog for a week and a half on end. And it wasn't until I cut out anything, that's when I started digging in a little bit more into the buildup and the negative effects it could have on the cholinergic system, that I realized that, and I realized, oh shit. So now I am not extremely wary of it. I'll use it once, maybe twice a week, but it's still, I think that's one of those hidden things that people just aren't aware of at all. For
sure. I mean, it seems very innocuous from the outset. Makes your memory work better, makes your focus better, right? Inhibits acetylcholinesterase. Yeah, seems kind of cool, but then, the longer term effects are not good. And believe me, there are people that are writing about it out there that have taken Huperzine A for considerable periods of time without cycling, and all of them run into problems. Mm-hmm. Unless you're 65 and can tolerate it, it's just not a good idea. And there are some people that take 200 micrograms a day, they're 65 years old, and they're fine with it. But they have all this degradation of that system.
Correct.
That, they seem to be able to tolerate it.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier the overtaxing of the cholinergic and dopaminergic systems. We talked a little bit about the cholinergic system. Can you explain a little bit more about what dopaminergic overtaxation feels like?
Yeah, it just feels like an annoyed stimulation. Whenever I've overtaxed that system by either taking tyrosine or modafinil or phenylalanine or L-dopa or mucopurines, it just feels like surges of motivation initially. Toward the latter end of the stack, you still are motivated, but there's this annoyed, agitated feeling along with it, like your brain just needs to calm down a little. And then the bigger issue with that I've run into with taking dopamine-centric stuff for too long is afterwards that whole system takes either a couple days or a week or more to get back to normal, basically for you to be motivated. And so those are the main effects. And then what seems to be clear also is that brain needs a balance. And so not every stack's going to encompass serotonin, GABA, acetylcholine, dopamine, etc. But if you overstimulate one system and not really fuss with another system, then the neurotransmitter quantities on those other systems, I theorize, decrease.
Yeah. Well, there's pretty clear research between the serotonin system and the dopamine system that if you overdo one, the other one, it's kind of this balancing act to where you overstimulate one, the other one drops off. So there's always this very delicate balance between those two, especially.
Exactly, man. Exactly, and that's like a huge issue, especially if you want to feel good every day. I mean, you can't be fussing with serotonin if you want to feel good.
Correct.
Yeah.
You mentioned yohimbine earlier, and that's a common ingredient we see in a lot of pre-workouts and weight loss supplements and stuff like that, but the nootropic effects aren't emphasized enough, and I don't think many people even wear them. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, dude, well, first of all, it's a blood flow facilitator, so should increase blood flow to the brain, definitely increases blood flow to sexual extremities. People actually use it as kind of like a Viagra alternative.
Right.
But it works. It works for that, by the way. I mean, look, there are folks that need. Like we have this one guy. He does. He's going to do a 250-mile bike ride, and he does like 100 to 150-mile bike rides. And we tried a bunch of different combinations of stuff for him to go do the bike ride. Like they run into energy lulls, and he was running into energy lulls at certain points that no other nootropics could really fix until he started dosing 5 to 10 milligrams yohimbine when he hit those lulls, and then instantly, and for the rest of the duration of the race, the dude was on point and feeling good. So, I mean, we know it's basically noradrenaline and adrenaline mediated, but it seems to be more potent than if you just take tyrosine, which works on those same chemicals. So, I mean, the pronounced effect for me is just it is a very stimulant feeling. So sometimes I'll take 10 milligrams yohimbine, drink a cup of coffee in the morning, and then I'm on my way. But I notice when I take it, and I don't know if there's other neurotransmitter kind of stuff going on. I don't really believe so, but it's got to be something. Maybe it's the blood flow thing that my brain generally works better. My girlfriend and I often go to her parents' house and we play cards. We play this game called Euchre. It's like a Midwestern card game. And sometimes we play Scrabble. They've come over her house and we played Scrabble. The days when I took yohimbine, I was better. I was better at Scrabble. So, I mean, not only does it stimulate you, but it seems to amp everything up in such a way where you actually can perform better too and not just be stimulated.
When you were formulating the first Cortex product, did you do a survey of the current landscape of kind of the pre-made nootropic stacks? And if so, did you identify common shortcomings in all of those? Yeah.
The most common shortcomings were that none of them were that noticeable. Folks would take, and look, all these companies are great. I don't want to bash anybody, but folks would take Alpha Brain, for example. First of all, there was inconsistencies in people's effects. Secondly, folks would take Alpha Brain and be like, I guess I felt like I could focus a little more during the day. And I was pretty verbally fluent compared to my baseline. And it was pretty stimulant but nobody was like, dude, this stuff changed my life. This stuff made me want to work. I started a company. I'm getting promoted at my job. And so that was kind of the number one thing. The other thing was that all of them are just run-of-the-mill nootropic compounds that you see in every stack, dosed in pretty much the same milligram quantity, and that's it. I mean, I give Alpha Brain a little credit because they have oat straw extract and a few other cool things in the stack. But if you look at the rest of it, what do we got? Tyrosine, theanine, GPC, Huperzine A, Serrata. So it's kind of just all the same stuff. That's why when I found that uridine worked so well, I was like, this is also awesome because no one really has a stack with uridine in it.
Well,
so, let me just say this. The other issue is I think a lot of stuff is priced too high. So, and not that it might not be worth it, but it's just you have to look at the market and realize for this particular thing, people don't want to pay $89 for a bottle, and they don't want to be forced into a subscription. And they don't want to pay $43 a bottle. They just don't want to do that. So, if they can pay $25 to $35 for a bottle and the stuff works, that's really the hot spot. And that's not an industry secret. I hope folks are watching this and end up being like, oh, well, man, that's good. It's it's obvious.
It is. And another thing I really like is that y'all have chosen to disclose the actual amounts of the ingredients that are in there. Things like Alpha Brain and a bunch of other, some of the other top-selling products or the more noteworthy products all use prop blends with stuff, and I'm just I know what kind of stuff goes on inside the industry, and I'm very wary, especially with things that are going to be activating different neurotransmitter networks in the brain, of taking a prop blended product.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, look, the thing in the beginning that was a little weird about it is because the dose thing, right? Like I knew I was going to get crap for that, so we didn't disclose the ingredients right away. It took, I think probably like a year for us to do that, because I just knew folks would be like, oh, 150 milligrams uridine, 80 milligrams CDP choline, like that isn't going to do anything, because they're looking at examine.com and the accompanying studies, which again you talked about. There's many flaws and how those studies are being interpreted and how people are reading them. And so yeah, initially I was a little weary about that, and then also it's like, yeah, honestly, I was thinking about competitors. In my previous company, we actually did have competitors lift some of our, like processes that we had refined on replacing iPad screens. Like somehow they figured out how we did it, probably because we made a mistake and told a customer or something, and that ended up getting back to somebody. And so I had issues with that in the past, so I genuinely was concerned about that. It's like you can't win either way. If you're concerned about that, and so you don't disclose the ingredients, then people are going to be like, oh, it's just a blend, we don't even know what's in it.
Right.
It's a very general argument that lacks granularity. But on the other hand, rendering it essentially nil. But then on the other hand, if you disclose the ingredients, then you're subject to criticism about quantity. So it's kind of like you're not going to win either way. I finally decided, look, we're just going to put it out. I know the stack works. Customers know the stack works. Like, we get orders every day. We have people repeating and people buying 4 or 5 bottles at a time, boxes at a time. So I know it works. So I really don't care. But as far as other companies that don't disclose the stuff, probably they're worried about competitors as one thing. And then, yeah, sure, we know the supplement industry. Probably there are people that are putting out stuff that really doesn't work, or doesn't work enough, or something, and they don't want to disclose that. I imagine that group of people being a lot less than people think, because I can tell you one thing: you can't run a company for any appreciable duration of time and basically have a shit product and have it keep running. Eventually, the internet's going to catch up to you, and people are going to write reviews about the efficacy of the product, and people are going to know.
Yeah. When you were first getting into the nootropic space, you mentioned that you did a lot of reading with neuroscience textbooks and whatnot. What were some of the ones that you turned to for information in the early days?
There was a book called The Brain That Changes Itself. Let me see if I can remember what I think the guy's name is Norman Doidge. Let's see. The Brain That Changes Itself. I believe the guy's name is Norman Doidge. But that was one of the pivotal books for me. Yeah, Dr. Norman Doidge. If anybody is interested in kind of basically neuroplasticity and how that applies to nootropics, how that applies to like your brain getting better to perform in life, read that book. And then there was a bunch of books in the cognitive sciences section. Some of them, I don't remember the names of them. It was just like half of it was reading about anatomy, and then the brain anatomy, and the other half of it was reading about performance benefits from modifying neurotransmitters. So there's a list of them. I have the list somewhere. If I could get that list, that'd be great. But the primary book is The Brain That Changes Itself. I mean, that is an incredible book. There's another book. God, what was it called? It's called Think, A Neuroscientist's Prescription for Better Brain Performance. It's just called Think, and then the subtitle is A Neuroscientist's Prescription for Better Brain Performance. That book completely changed my life. It talked about the food-based kind of perspective on improving the brain, but every other thing to include modifying neurotransmitters. Those were like the standout books for me that really did it.
Perfect. Okay, moving from that, you just brought up diet. What role, and there's an increased focus these days on gut health. It's linked to the brain and the production of serotonin, and a lot of people transitioning to ketogenic diets for the belief that it gives them better mental energy, better physical energy, and just better overall mood. Where do you fall on that, and with the role of diet in regards to brain health and performance?
Okay, well, let's just make one thing clear. The reason folks have better brain performance on the ketogenic diet is because they're being flooded with catecholamines, epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine. Whether that's a gluconeogenesis mediated thing or not, I really don't know why exactly that happens. But that's the predominant thing. The second thing is that you are allowing yourself to switch from fueling from glucose to fatty acids, and they enter your brain cell mitochondria and fuel it pretty efficiently. The problem is that doesn't last long. Meaning, if you're doing it in a year, your energy is going to dip, and that's primarily because, despite all these books and despite all these guys, like the guys that wrote The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living, and despite all the Jimmy Moores and the paleo freaks out there, in the end, your cells prefer glucose. They just do, and there's no way to get around that. In fact, the more you stay on a ketogenic diet. And look, people can make it. You just have to eat a lot of vegetables. And God, refeed with carbs at least twice a week, please. But the more you do that, the more you actually downregulate your capacity to use glucose for energy. And there's scientists that agree on this. There was a guy on Joe Rogan pretty recently enough that had a debate with Rogan about it, where he's basically saying, like, yeah, after long stints of ketogenic diet, then you have this problem of metabolic switching where you can't get back to using glucose, and that gives you energy problems, many other types of disorders. Right. But in the end, it's just, where do I start? Like, there's studies that chronic fatigue syndrome is plausibly caused by this metabolic switching to less efficient fuel sources, fats and amino acids. Like, there's research behind that, and that's like lactic acid builds up in your body and you don't function as well. The other, I feel like I'm like bashing keto here. I think it's fine for people just do cyclic ketogenic. Go in for a couple days, go out, eat carbs, please. I think the last major issue that I have with the ketogenic diet, the consistent ketogenic diet, is the absence of carbohydrates for gut bacteria. Like the bifidobacterium, lactobacilli, all the other native species that you need to balance out the gram-negative stuff, which is already there, but they're not causing problems because they're in check by the gram-positive stuff. You basically starve yourself of the substrate that they need to operate and to stay at quantities which keep your flora balanced. If you want a first-class ticket to health problems that last years, mess your gut up. And a great way to do that is to just eat keto, don't eat carbohydrates, and don't eat vegetables. Some people seem to be able to make it – they'll run into energy problems for sure. And they're not going to be able to work out to the extent that you or I can or other people. But some people can make it a while on the ketogenic diet and be relatively okay if they're not running a lot or lifting heavy weights, as long as they're eating a lot of vegetables. And the primary reason for that isn't like vitamin K or magnesium or something. It is fiber. And so the fiber allows their gut to feed the bacteria, most of the bacteria species that they need in order to kind of keep things relatively balanced.
Have you been tempted to try it just to see what it did for your cognitive performance at all? So just since there's a lot of hype around it these days.
You mean the ketogenic diet?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I did it for 9 months straight. See, this is what people don't get about me. That's why I know all this. I ruined my endocrine system. I ruined my gut. My sex drive took a shit. All that stuff happened to me. It was terrible, man. I'm a 29-year-old dude. Beautiful woman walks in front of me. Nothing. Just nothing. So, yeah, look, I did that. I talk about it often enough, and folks are like, they just cite the same stuff that they've seen on all these blogs. It's like you see verbatim that they're talking about, oh, the body doesn't – there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, that kind of like dogmatic, repetitive stuff.
Right.
But what they don't know about me is that I was there too. I was an advocate for the ketogenic diet in the first couple months when it really made me feel good, which it does for everybody. I was that same defensive asshole on the web being like, you don't know, there's science behind it. Go read this, and linking people and sending people to studies. I was that guy until I finally got out of denial and realized it was ruining my health. And then understanding the mechanisms of it, looking at my endocrine system, my body temperature dropped significantly. My gut was terrible. I developed reflux that took years to get under control. And so I did it. But I can tell you that these days, so it ruined my metabolism. It ruined my endocrine functioning, thyroid functioning particularly. These days, I can go into ketosis for a day or two. And it does feel really great. And that for me is the best application of it. I'll fast, which would be one way to induce it, or I'll wake up, drink a little bit of coffee, a little bit of MCT oil or something, and then, within a couple hours I'm in, and then I'll just, eat either fast or just eat basically just eggs and steak and things of this nature throughout the next 24 hours. And absolutely, when it happens, I feel it. It's a lull in my energy, and then it basically just kicks in, and then I'm like Superman, almost like I'm on modafinil or something. And I can do that for a day or two, and that's about as sustainable as it is. Probably I can do it for 4 or 5 days, but I know what'll eventually start happening, which will be my gut will get jacked up again. I'm like now susceptible to it, you know what I mean? So I have to be careful. I'll start having energy issues, and there's zero way at this stage in my metabolic functioning for me to be ketogenic and lift weights or run.
Yeah. What is a typical day in your life as far as work, diet, supplementation?
It changes, I got to tell you, but I mean, I guess there's some similarities. The template now I can say is this: I'll wake up, not eat anything for probably 2 or 3 hours, giant cup of coffee, something like this, just like a big cup of coffee right away. And if it's a day that I'm cycling off of nootropics, no nootropics. If it's a day where I have a lot of work to do, stuff that I'm going to be sitting in front of my laptop for a long time, there's videos to edit, there's admin stuff to do, there's customer service stuff I have to do, there's consults I have to do where I'm constantly talking to folks, then I'll take a nootropic stack, and that varies. Racetams, himbine, sometimes modafinil, sometimes adrafinil, the Cortex stack, modified Siltep stack, L-cartheacrine, just combinations that I figured out really, really work well for me. I will around 1 or 2. I mean, most recently I've been eating like a meal that's predominantly fat with a little bit of carbs. So maybe I'll eat like a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich and like some hash browns. And then after that meal, that's when I work out. I no longer fasted workout. It's just that's another thing that if you do it continuously, it's such a stressor on the body. People can get away with it for a long time, but eventually it can become an issue. So then I'll lift some weights, do a couple mile run. And then I'm basically back to work. I'll sit in front of my laptop, do work, do business stuff, edit videos, probably till at that point like 6 or 7 p.m. At which point I will scale back, take an hour, take a shower, meditate for 20 minutes, relax, talk to my girlfriend on the phone or something, or plan if we're going to get together later on then. And then, somewhere around 8 p.m. or something, I'll eat a dinner. And my dinners are basically like a steak, some rice, and a vegetable. And that, that's essentially where I'm at. Throughout the week, if I notice that that I've skimped on particular macronutrients, either fat or carbs, I refeed on those macronutrients. And most of the time, it's not necessarily that I've skimped on carbohydrates, but most of the time I just refeed for two days or something. There'll be a point at the end of the week or at a point that I determine where I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go crazy. And I totally don't eat healthy at those points. I'm not eating like salmon, a sweet potato and asparagus. I eat pizza, burgers, ice cream, all that stuff.
Do you notice a drop in cognitive performance the following day? Because you hear so much fear-mongering about, the detriment of eating some of these quote-unquote bad foods on brain performance. So what is your experience the following day?
Not a shred, my friend. Not only is my brain, I'm not running into problems, but I feel better. I feel so much better. My sex drive is higher. I must be cranking out hormones better. I feel like my testosterone cranks up. My sex drive is through the roof. I just feel energized. I'm motivated. I honestly feel great. The only time that I had problems eating stuff like that was honestly when my metabolism wasn't right, when my gut wasn't right. It was frankly after doing keto for a long time or doing any other macronutrient deficient diet. When you mess all that stuff up, from omitting major food sources or major macronutrients, that's when you're susceptible to all these problems. That's when eventually you get blood sugar problems. That's another issue with the ketogenic diet eventually is blood sugar issues, despite what people think. And so, no, when that was going on, I could eat ice cream in the middle of the day and I would have a crash. Right now, I could, any time of the day, I could eat an apple pie, some ice cream, some pizza. I feel great. I honestly just feel great all the time. But, I'm not doing that all the time. The rest of the week is pretty good, pretty healthy foods. I like to eat, bacon and eggs and stuff and some hash browns. And then I always eat like a salmon or steak, a good solid carb source, and some vegetables for dinner.
What kind of a brew are you drinking in the morning? Dark roast, light roast, espresso?
It really all changes. I used to do espresso, but it's these days, especially if I'm going to take a stack, it's too wiry for me. I really don't like it. Light roast mainly, with actual sugar in it, and half and half.
Perfect. Do you take your nootropics on an empty stomach, or do you find them better with food personally? And then what do you recommend to clients?
What I recommend to people is the same experience that I have, which is anything but a full stomach. So if you have a medium stomach, totally fine. Empty stomach, probably better, because you don't have anything messing with the metabolism of the compound in your stomach and your intestines. I think if you're eating food too, you're secreting more stomach acid, so offers the potential for the stomach acid to degrade the material to some extent. But honestly, it's not that much of a difference if you take it on an empty stomach versus a light stomach. Getting into medium stomach, probably a little difference, and obviously a full stomach is kind of something I wouldn't do. That isn't to say that some stacks don't work well on a full stomach, because they do. I mean, go eat a giant meal, take some modafinil. You're still going to feel it.
Yeah. Well, what about beer and alcohol in regards to cognitive performance nootropics, and where do you line that up in the hierarchy of things?
Well, I can say this. Early on in my time experimenting, I recognized that if I went out and drank some beers and started feeling like my brain wasn't working, that I could take a nootropic either right before or during, and my brain would start working again. That was one of the things that was interesting with Alcar and tyrosine specifically. So I would drink a couple beers. Everyone around me, we'd all be drinking or something. I'd notice folks' cognitive function start to decline. You know when it's happening, right?
Yeah.
And either right before or kind of maybe on the first beer, I'd take 500 milligrams of tyrosine or 500 milligrams of Alcar, sometimes taking both of those. And I'd be sharp as hell, and everyone would be declining. That's my first kind of thought on that. I used to do that. These days, probably to a lesser extent, but if I feel like I need to, I will. But again, I mean, I also think that, first of all, I don't suggest mixing very many compounds with lots of alcohol. If you have a couple drinks, and you take a racetam stack, you shouldn't run into an issue. But I think where folks start running into issues is when they start taking research chemicals or things like phenibut, and they're drinking alcohol at the same time, and that's just like a huge no-no. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But I also think that, I mean, look, if your body, like we did a video recently where it was like, why am I energized all day? If you fixed problems and you also eat well for your body, don't over-exercise, do everything right, your energy is going to be really pretty good all the time. And so when like my girlfriend and I would like to drink red wine. When we do that, I feel great. I don't have cognitive issues whatsoever. We'll play euchre and Scrabble and other brain games. We're both very intellectual. And we play that stuff, and I never really run into cognitive issues with it. And so that's my take on it. Don't mix a whole lot of it. If you need to take some Alcar or tyrosine or regular dose racetams with a couple drinks, fine. You'll function a hell of a lot better than other people that are drinking with you when you see their cognitive decline. It's not something I promote. It's just something I figured out as a hack. And in the end, if your body and your energy is great, your brain's going to work fine even when you consume alcohol.
Perfect. What do you think are some overrated nootropic ingredients that you see commonly hyped up on the market that you're just not a big believer in?
Hard to say. I mean, I don't look at it that way. I mean, I understand how pronounced the modification of neurotransmitters are with compounds. So I don't know. I can't really think of them. I like to look at them in a positive light and try to get the most out of them. Try to combine them with the right stuff that actually works. Honestly, I can't really say. I mean, because for some people, when it comes to nootropics, like what are we talking about? Racetams, modafinil, the choline sources, uridine, theacrine, Alcar, research chemicals. They're all potent, and they all do work. I guess my only response to that, I guess, is maybe to some of the lesser known pre-made stacks or other pre-made stacks that are out there that just have run-of-the-mill stuff that isn't particularly different or variant in any way and doesn't offer a powerful punch. I mean, that would be the stuff that I would say avoid. But I don't know that they're overrated, because if they're crappy, then people really aren't going to be talking good stuff about them. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's really it. I just don't have many compounds that I don't like. Maybe one compound, solbutamine. It's like bioavailable B1.
Yep. Yeah.
I think that's a little overrated. I can't. I understand how there's different effects for different people, and some people are like, "Wow, it changed my life. It makes me motivated." But I've taken it several times. We have suggested it to clients. We did it a long time ago, not much anymore, because just nobody really got good responses from it, without with the exception of like that 10% of people. So that'd be really my only one.
See, I've used solbutamine a few times, and I get a little bit of a mental awakening and a little bit more energy, I find.
Yeah.
One thing I don't know if it's DMAE.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That is a very hit or miss compound. It's essentially acetylcholine increasing in like alpha GPC and CDP choline is, but the pathway that it takes to increase more acetylcholine is way different than those two compounds.
Correct.
So you know what I mean? You're right, actually. That's what I would say. Centrophenoxine, which is its more bioavailable kind of enhanced version, is actually really good. But DMAE, I would say that maybe is overrated. But I also think, based on the way it's working, people's responses to it are super variable.
Right.
And that could be why you think that, or other people think that. I can't take high doses of it. It all makes me tired. It's like, to me, it's a super blast of acetylcholine with very low doses. So honestly, I stack it like 25 milligrams with a bunch of other things, and I'm good. But if I take it by itself in any more than 50 milligrams, I don't feel good.
Gotcha. Any underrated nootropics that you think just don't get the respect or due that they should?
Hell yeah. Theacrine, Alcar theacrine as a combination, Alcar, alpha GPC, caffeine theanine as a combination. Well, I mean, people generally know uridines also, but it's still, for some reason, it just doesn't get enough attention. It's just such a powerful compound that it doesn't get enough attention. Another one would be adrafinil. Adrafinil is like the natural legal version, essentially, of modafinil. Liver has to process it into active modafinil. But I mean, now that we've got like whatever 3,000 or however many people we've consulted over the past couple of years, I see people that take modafinil, don't get a response, take adrafinil, get a response. Whether that has to do with that liver conversion process or something else, I don't know, but I imagine that that's what it is. There's something going on there which makes them respond to adrafinil. So I think a lot of folks just brush it off. Oh, why wouldn't you just get modafinil? Adrafinil is very powerful for some people, but then scaling that up a little bit and looking at the rest of the upward mobility scale for afinils, I think that modafinil is underrated, because people these days want to take flowmodafinil or armodafinil, right? Some of these other potent analogs of modafinil, and quite frankly, though you have to dose them lower, and they seem to, I don't know, be a little more potent, or the effect duration window is a little longer, or the onset's a little better, or maybe the feel is a little cleaner. It's not that much different. It's really not that much different. And so that your dose on modafinil is predictable. The effect that a particular dose is going to get you is very predictable. And so, frankly, modafinil is underrated compared to some of these other analogs that people think are so much better.
With adrafinil, since it is undergoing conversion in the liver, are you a big believer in any of it being hepatotoxic or harsh on the liver at all?
No, I mean, if you actually go and try to research that, there's no like definitive logical breakdown where that comes from. It's nowhere. It doesn't exist. Someone said it on a forum and then everyone repeated it. That's exactly what happened with that. Right. That's the value of having me around, because every time anyone says something about anything, I'll spend a month and figure it out, and I'll determine it. The second thing is, I took adrafinil for 40 days straight and then got my liver enzymes tested. I did an entire panel. Everything was the same. Everything was fine. Now, I didn't take it for 100 days straight. Had I done that, maybe there would have been elevated liver enzymes. But 40 days straight, nothing going on.
You think there'd be even a modest level of elevation in the enzymes?
Something. Yeah. I mean, something. But then again, I've also taken nootropics for going on 11 years now, and I've never had elevated liver enzymes. So genetically, maybe I have a great liver. I mean, I can't answer that question, but I don't believe that it is problematic, especially if you're cycling appropriately, which you should be. No one should be taking anything for that long.
Correct. How often would you say, how many stacks should somebody rotate through in a week, and how often should they repeat certain ingredients? Just as a casual, caffeine obviously is pretty much fine every day for most people. Stuff like Alcar, Alpha GPC.
It's hard. I mean, I suggest different things to different people based on what they can tolerate. A 60-year-old person is going to be different than a 30-year-old person. People that have particular problems in certain neurotransmitter systems, they can tolerate more of that neurotransmitter. Folks that have ADHD that used to take Adderall, that have burnt out dopamine receptors, they can tolerate uridine-centric stacks for a lot longer than other people can. So it's really hard to say. So it's situationally specific. But if I could be general, I would say optimally, you want to have like 10 to 15 different stacks to cycle through over the course of a month. That's optimal. Not everyone's going to do that, but that's what I do these days. If you want to be maybe a little less optimal, but still get by and frankly, probably just do just fine, then yeah, Monday, take one stack. Tuesday, take a different stack. Wednesday, take a different stack. Thursday, maybe take the stack you took on Monday. Friday, take a different stack. Next week, don't take any of those same stacks. New stack Monday, new stack Tuesday. Maybe Wednesday, take one of the stacks from the previous week or the stack you took on Monday. Thursday, take some modafinil. Friday, take some L-carnitine. That's really the best way that I figured out to do it. And the thing you're trying to avoid is, well, two things: side effects and then the efficacy of the nootropic dropping off. If you do what I just said, you won't run into that problem, at least as much. We get people all the time that are like, man, I took this oxiracetam CDP choline stack, and it's awesome. I want to take it every day. And I did for 30 days, and now it doesn't work anymore. It's because you took it for 30 days. You know? So that's my take on that. As many different compounds you should cycle between throughout the week, fine. Now, like, to kind of answer your sort of second question, I mean, yeah, you could take phenylpiracetam with a couple other compounds in your Monday stack, and then also have it in there Wednesday. You'd be fine, and you could really do that three days a week. I mean, there's some times where I'll have the same compound but just in different stacks 3 days a week. But it's normally something a lot less potent, a little more innocuous, like Alcar, theacrine, theanine, things of that nature. Okay.
For the people that are interested in sourcing some bulk nootropics to start dabbling with, outside of the Cortex stacks, do you have any preferred vendors whose stuff you trust? Because finding reputable distributors and providers can be a sketchy proposition sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, three main companies: Nootropics Depot, Nootropic Source, and Lift Mode. Lift Mode doesn't have as much of the kind of classical nootropics, or at least just a large inventory compared to these other guys, but they've been around a long time. Lift Mode has been around a long time. I still have Noopep that I bought for them like 5 years ago that I just haven't touched because I bought new Noopep. But it's just like, I look at it and I go, dude, Lift Mode has been there through all this stuff. When I was in the beginning getting this stuff, Lift Mode was in there. Those are the three companies that I would basically stick with. Right now, they've got the best quality product. They're reputable. They're known. Most of them take every payment source. Their payment processors aren't getting whacked like some of these other companies. And there's no shadiness behind them. There's legitimacy. There's professionalism. You kind of know what you're getting. They're using like WooCommerce on a WordPress platform, so you're getting order updates when the stuff ships. You're getting tracking information. I have zero affiliation with those companies. I've never talked to any of the founders or owners. I don't even know who they are, but they're what I use.
Perfect.
Now there was a company called Powder City back in the day, and they were around for a while, and they actually did have good product, and they shipped on time and stuff, but something happened with them. I forget exactly what it was. I think maybe they had payment processing issues. They were probably just trying to, I don't know. I mean, I think they were selling too many research chemicals or something. But And then there's a company that essentially, I think if you go to powdercity.com, it actually is still a website now, but it refers you to a bunch of affiliate links for product. And I just don't know the legitimacy of any of those companies, so I would stick with the ones I put out.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ryan. I hope I didn't keep you too long, man. This was fantastic. I would love to have you again on the show again. There's a lot more wormholes we need to go down with nootropics.
Way more. Always.
So yeah, tell people where they can contact you if they're interested in a consultation or purchase the Cortex stacks.
Yeah, the consults are pretty straightforward. It's a 40-minute call with me, 15 additional email correspondences, right around $80, $79. I mean, right now, if you're watching this like the week of March 19th, I think it's down to 60. You can do that at livecortex.com. Everything that we do is right at livecortex.com. If you're like an executive or somebody that needs higher level, more comprehensive consulting, we have larger packages. We can do $500 packages, $1,000 packages, $5,000 packages, 6-month packages, a year package. Anything that folks want or need depends on how deep the rabbit hole you are when it comes to deficiencies in brain performance. The Cortex Stack, livecortex.com. Cortex Stack right now is $33. Pretty powerful. And that's it. All of our content is at livecortex.com. If you go to the footer at livecortex.com and type in like Noopept or Aniracetam or Adrafenol or anything, it'll actually render blog posts of our videos that we did on YouTube on that topic. Otherwise, the Cortex Labs Nootropics podcast on iTunes, just how it sounds, Google it or subscribe to it on your phone, and then the Cortex Labs Nootropics channel on YouTube.
Perfect. Thank you so much again, Ryan, for everything. I'm going to include links to everything that you just pointed out on the show notes, and
cool.
We'll do this again, man.
I would love to, man. Thanks. It's been great talking with you, dude.
You too.
Okay. See ya.